Hi everyone, it's Kute here, sending you lots of love wherever you are around the world right now. Big hugs, respect, and love. In today's video, I received an email from someone recently, and he was saying, Kute, how do you deal with someone you love? Maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's your parent or your loved one or your child, someone you really love, and they're stuck in negativity or a bad habit or a pattern, or maybe they're stuck in a certain way of being that isn't working, or maybe they're stuck in anger. How do you deal with someone you love that is stuck and they don't want to change? They don't want to change, they're not willing to change, they're not open to changing. Ultimately, what I found working with people over the last 15 years is unless someone wants to change, unless someone is committed to shifting, we don't shift unless we really want to shift. We don't shift unless deep down you are really committed to shifting. Look at your life. Maybe it was cigarettes or alcohol or a certain addiction you might have, or procrastinating or a way of being. Unless you want to shift, you won't shift. One of the most important things in creating a transformation in one's life, in your life, is you have to be truly committed. One of the questions I ask people at my events, at my retreats, and my seminars, even working with people one-on-one, is the question, this is the key question: what do you want more than anything else? Ask yourself that question. What do I want more than anything else? Because unless you are crystal clear that you really want to shift, you won't shift. So ultimately, you can't change anyone. You don't have the power to change anyone unless they want to change. You can have the best intentions, the best heart, the best vision. You can want it for them. Sometimes you want it for them more than they want it for themselves, and this is an issue. And even if somehow you force them to change for a moment, unless they want it sincerely for themselves, the change won't last. Ultimately, I like to say, you and I, we might think we know what someone's life should be. We might think we know how someone else should be in our lives. And maybe we're right. Maybe we do have a higher perspective. Maybe we do have more experience and more wisdom. But the bottom line is this: every single human being on the planet, we all have our own soul lessons. We all have certain lessons that we need to learn, and the only way we can learn them are through experiences and relationships. Maybe you've had a moment where you've seen your friend who was diving into a certain relationship and you thought, oh my God, this is going to be a train wreck, and there's nothing you could say that could deter your friend from going into that seemingly train wreck situation. But sometimes it's karma that pulls us together, and we just have to go through certain experiences. We have to experience certain things for ourselves so that we can hopefully wake up, evolve, and learn the lessons for ourselves. So you can't learn the lessons for someone else. And ultimately, I like to say, none of us, we really don't know what someone's lessons are. We can intuit, we can assume, but you and I, unless we're God, we really don't know the lessons that someone else's soul needs to learn in a given situation, in a given experience. Each of us, we have our journeys, and certain situations, certain relationships, we had to go through, right? If you look at your life, you had to go through them. Maybe it was abuse, maybe it was a disaster, maybe it was going bankrupt, maybe it was failing completely. You had to go through it in that moment so that you could learn. When a mango is ripe, then it will drop. And sometimes we haven't ripened yet, so you can't force anyone. So you have to really learn to allow each individual, each unique soul, the dignity of their own process, the dignity of their own timing. If they're in a situation that is challenging, if they're stuck, I'm going to propose that on some level, deep down they know, but perhaps they're not ready yet. And if someone isn't ready, all you can really do is honor that. Maybe if you're close to them, you can express it to them, you can talk to them, you can communicate, but you can't make someone change unless they are willing to. So one of the things to really help someone who's stuck, that you care for, that you love, right? One of the things that you can do first is recognize that they have their own lessons in evolution and they will do it in their own timing. Number two, what you can also do is give up the idea, which is really judgmental, give up the idea that they should be different. Stop resisting them. So give up the idea that they should change. How do we know what's right and wrong for them in the grand scheme of their evolution, considering that sometimes some of our greatest blessings, some of our greatest growth have come through the disastrous choices we've made, or having to go through certain things to burn out lessons and karma, so to speak. So we have to give up this idea that we know better. We have to give up this, I call it righteousness, that, well, they should change. It would be nice, but we have to give up the idea that they should be different, that they should change, that they should give up the anger. Because when you come from that perspective that they should change, they should evolve, they should meditate, they should do yoga, they shouldn't be angry, they shouldn't be a certain way, then not only are you resisting them, but you are not showing up in the full expression and dimension of love. You are in your mind, you are in your ego, you are in your judgment, and what you're bringing to their already stuckness is not love. What you're bringing to their already stuckness, considering let's say that they actually are stuck, what you're bringing is non-love. What you're bringing is your judgment. And when judgment meets their stuckness, it doesn't, you could say, melt or resolve the situation. If you really are committed to serving this person, whether it's a client, whether it's a friend, whether it's a loved one, whether it's a spouse, and they are going through whatever they're going through and they're not ready to change it, what you can do is show up as an unconditional, loving, compassionate presence of just pure love. A presence of love without judgment, unconditionally honoring their soul's evolution and journey, really seeing, not just seeing their stuckness or their brokenness or their anger, but really seeing them for who they are, because in that spaciousness of you not seeing them as stuck or seeing them as they need to change, but seeing who they really are, hopefully, because they might have forgotten who they are, hopefully in that reflection of your own seeing of who they are, they will look into your eyes and slowly begin to awaken, because as they look into your eyes and they see you seeing who they really are, the perfection of who they are, the beauty of who they are, the magnificence of who they really are underneath what they're currently doing, they themselves will begin to remember. It's one thing to tell someone you should be different, you should give up the anger, you should meditate, you should do yoga. We end up shooting all over our friend or our client or a person or a loved one, thinking we're doing them some kind of service. I say the biggest way, the quickest way to help shift someone is to actually sometimes not try and shift them, especially if they're not ready. In that moment, you can just show up as the unconditional presence of love and just be that space. Simply hold the space. Don't keep looking at them like something's wrong with you. Hold the space. Remind them of their divinity. Remind them of their perfection. And when they're ready, they will come to you. And what you will do during that time, it might take days, months, years, decades. Each time you see them with that perfection, it will pull out it will pull from within them a bit more of their greatness. It will help awaken something in them a little bit more. Trust me, when they're ready, they will show up and they will come to you. And I think it's one thing to talk about it or tell them, but I say be the example. Stop trying to change them and simply be the example of love. Rather than telling someone, hey, meditate, give up the anger. Sometimes in trying to get someone to change, to give up, let's say, anger or some pattern, we become that thing itself. We angrily tell that person, give up the anger, you shouldn't be so angry. It's not spiritual to be angry, rather than just being. Many years ago, once upon a time, I was so fanatical about people. You got to do yoga, you got to eat healthy, rather than just showing up and saying nothing. I think it was Emerson that said, who you are being, who you are, speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you say. And when you show up just being a presence of love, you won't even have to say anything, but eventually they might get curious. Eventually they may feel so loved and seen by you, they might ask you, What is it that you're doing? How do I give? How do I be as happy as you? How do I be as peaceful as you? And in that moment, then there's a ripeness, there's a readiness in the space that you have created and held them in all this time. One of the things that I found really powerful is as you show up in that compassion, one thing that can help you show up in that compassion, because it's easy to be judgmental, is if you're able to actually fully, I mean, we hear about it, but to fully put yourself in the other person's shoes, right? To fully put yourself in their experience, to turn around and fully inhabit their experience, to really seek to understand what it is they're going through, and you can then realize the rightness of how they feel, what they feel, the rightness of why they feel justified and stuck and angry. And if you can really understand them fully, then you can, from this perspective, show up in compassion. Now you might say, well, who they're being doesn't work for me. Just because you're loving, just because you're unconditional, doesn't mean you have to be around them. I always say I have a perfect relationship with everyone. Some people I choose not to be around because of who they're being, really their stuckness, their anger, their vibes, their negativity, or whatever it is they're being, doesn't work for me or doesn't align with where I'm going. It might require that you step to the side or rearrange your relationship or see them less, or maybe never see them. Right? Never see them. So there are choices that you have. You can be unconditionally loving, accepting, but remember, you also have a choice. And sometimes some of the things that we want other people to change and shift, we are actually projecting onto them, and they are the very things inside of ourselves that we don't like, that we can't deal with, that we can't accept and embrace, that we see in them, that we try and get them to shift, and it's really a distraction from ourselves. So if your friend, if that person is pissing you off, if they're upsetting you, it's creating a trigger or a reaction inside of you, then likely what you're seeing in them is your own projection, and you're seeing that own aspect of yourself that you need to change. So don't distract yourself trying to focus on changing someone else and miss what you need to do inside. Ultimately, if you want to be a huge contribution to the world, make a difference on the planet, change yourself. Change yourself. As Michael Jackson said, start with the man or the woman in the mirror. You have the power to make a difference. You are the one. Folks, if you enjoyed this video blog, I invite you to put everything I've been sharing into practice. Please share it with your friends. Invite your friends to sign up for this video blog. You'll receive weekly and monthly free gifts, sending you big love now.